Game of Thrones Season 8, the Battle of Winterfell preview. I am Bo Oliver, and today I'm joined by Aaron, the Nerd Suit Monkey, and Marissa. How you doing, Marissa?
I'm good.
And I needed silence there so I can keep going with the introduction.
I didn't know.
No, but it's good. I'm glad to know that you're good. Yeah, just take a sip of your drink of your Burger King orange high C. What is it? Sprite. That's actually a perfect intro. And we are here today to preview Game of Thrones Episode 3. It's when we think the Battle of Winterfell is going to take place. But overall, this video is going to be just a preview for the final season of Game of Thrones. And we're going to talk about some of the ideas and theories that we have for all the characters. There's so much to wrap up, and at times it feels almost a little overwhelming when you think about each individual character and where they've come from the beginning of the show to where they are now. So we're going to do our best to try and predict and theorize and just overall preview where we want the show to go and where we think it's going to go. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
You're allowed to speak now.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, so I think a good place to start with this, I mean, we'll go right to the Battle of Winterfell, Episode 3. It's going to be 82 minutes, the longest committed battle to film. Have you guys heard about this? It's going to be longer than Helm's Deep, apparently.
I've read a couple articles.
Yeah, you've read a couple articles.
Yes.
To me, that's just insane. And I wonder what the budget is going to be for this episode, but it's going to be like watching a movie on television. And so many times, we've said it so many times that they blur the line between movie and TV quality. But what are your expectations just for the visual flair of this episode? What do you think we're going to see?
It's going to be interesting because we haven't seen the second trailer yet, if there is going to be. We only saw the first. We got a couple little snippets of, we had the whites walking up, we had the characters we know, and then we had a bunch of scenes with the fire, right? And that's going to be a main thing. And a main takeaway from this battle, I think, is, the thing that defeats the whites is fire. I mentioned this before in another video, kind of like when Blackwater, when Bran was talking about how soldiers get scared, they get antsy, they're going to drop these barrels, and it's going to cause chaos within the castle. And I can see this happening too, where trying to get all this fire arrows, fire catapults, and it's just going to turn into utter chaos within the walls of Winterfell. And we see it's kind of inflamed when we see Brienne on the battlements fighting. I think from that perspective, it's just going to be all-out chaos, where Battle of the Bastards, it was in the daylight. You saw the bodies piling up. It was just muddy, gritty. I think this is going to be a little bit more chaotic within the castle. I don't think they're going to be able to go head-to-head with them. They're going to have to fall back at some point.
Right. Well, I think this ends with an overwhelming victory for the Army of the Dead, where they are going to have to fall back. And I think Winterfell is going to be destroyed. This is the third time we've seen a battle for Winterfell, right? The first time it was Theon. Not really a battle, and then the second time is kind of the Battle of the Bastards.
Stannis.
Right, Stannis as well. Yeah, I think Winterfell gets destroyed, and that's an interesting point when you talk about the fire that's engulfing everything. You would assume that it's dragon fire coming from both sides, because Daenerys has to participate in this battle. We didn't see any action shots with her. It's funny because you see the two armies lining up. Where's the Night King? Because he was very much leading that charge at the end of Season 7 when the wall comes down. He's right at the front with the dragon. Well, you think it could be wildfire, it could be fire catapults, fire arrows.
Well, you think with the dragons, I don't think they would be actually in Winterfell. And
yeah, it's a small for a dragon.
Yeah, I think they'll be more out in the field. Who knows? I mean, I was just thinking from that perspective. That could just be in the background of the field, too. It might not be actually in the castle. And also just Viserion. It seems that the blue flame, I don't know if it catches like regular fire. We've seen wildfire catch, and it turns into regular fire to an extent after the green kind of fades.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with the dragon fire, but we haven't seen with the blue, especially when it took down the wall. There's nothing really to catch, so it's interesting to see how that manifests into a different form after it comes out of his mouth.
One character I want to focus on right now is Arya, and I've been having this idea in my head that maybe Arya doesn't make it out of the Battle of Winterfell, that she could be one of the major casualties, because we're assuming that several characters are going to die. I think that they're going to save a lot of the main characters, but it would be interesting to see if they just plucked off one of those main Stark characters during this battle. I don't know, because we all think Arya is going to die in Season 8, right? That's something that we all believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what role do you think she plays in this battle? Does she use her faceless powers, or do you think she gets out of this alive?
Not really. I don't know if this will actually happen in the show, but that scene in the trailer where she's running through the crypt, and it very obviously seems like something's chasing her, and her line about wanting to see Death's new face. Her journey has been, like, detaching from the Stark name, and then this past season, she sort of embraced it more, despite being a faceless man. So I think she'll die because she's embracing being a Stark, and she'll do something, some kind of major sacrifice.
Do you think it's Lady Stoneheart chasing her? I've heard that idea going around Twitter.
I'm not. I've held out for so long. I'm done with it. I can't.
Where would her body? Who got her body? Who brought her body back?
Chilling.
It's in the lake.
Well, they brightened up the photo and it
looks like a man.
Yeah, you can't really tell, but
Ned, headless Ned.
As far as Arya is concerned, I think at the end of the series, all magic is going to be gone. So dragons, faceless abilities, stuff like that.
So anybody associated with dragons, with magic, is going to die.
Yeah,
or at least be destroyed in some way.
I've always got that sense. And second, like her character, like what would she do after?
Right. Where does this character go?
It feels like her story. It would be a fitting end for her to go out, either saving somebody like Sansa or Jon or something like that, and just maybe sacrificing herself, giving her new abilities, and doing something heroic or saving the day or something like that.
I've read a theory that it was Bran. Bran gave Arya the dagger at the end of season 7, right? It was pretty weighted, I would think. He said this was the dagger that was meant to kill me. I've seen theories that Bran will do some warging stuff and she'll kill Bran wherever he is. Or maybe he's in the Night King and maybe she dies in that process or she doesn't, but I don't know.
So Bran takes control of the Night King and then she stabs the Night King?
Yeah, like Bran will, maybe he'll go back in time. But I think that's an interesting, I guess, development if she doesn't die in this season, if instead she is responsible for killing one of her own siblings, especially how decimated their family has become.
It's funny, people point to the moment when he hands her the dagger, that when he lets it go, it seems that he's thinking about something, that the last touch that he has, he remembers something that this dagger had something to do with in the past or what it's going to do in the future, that it maybe is the dagger that takes his life. Going to Bran, too, you have a point about Arya.
Bran, I don't think he could take any of his. He's just a weird guy in season 7.
He looks like he's always tripping balls on acid.
Yeah.
He always looks like he's taking a fresh album cover picture, too. He's always squinting his eyes. What do you think he does during the Battle of Winterfell? Because you would have to think that he participates. And I was just watching the episode where Cold Hands, Benjen Stark, saves him. And he says that the Night King eventually is going to make his way to the wall. And when he does, you're going to be there waiting for him. So that's really the matchup here. We always talk about Daenerys and Jon, but Bran is the most powerful human being in the show at this point. Do these guys, are they going to participate in this battle? Bran, Daenerys, the Night King? Is this where Bran gets inside one of the dragons?
I would hope so. There has to be a reason for him to be the three-eyed raven, right? I don't think it's just to give Jon true heritage. I think it definitely has to have a greater role to play. I hope it's something where it's like, he's locked in like Professor X style and just manipulating all the different aspects of the battle as far as dragons, White Walkers, maybe goes into ghosts or something like that, like something cool, like where he's...
Maybe Nymeria's pack?
Yeah, but he's just jumping all over the place, He's kind of just has his hand in everything.
You think Nymeria's wolves come back?
I don't know.
That would be a little stupid, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think they're going to do it.
I wouldn't care if they didn't.
They're the Knights of the Vale of the Battle of the Bastards.
Arya's riding on the back of one of them.
They're all circled in, and the fucking wolves just come and take out all the whites.
9 of them.
Kind of want to see, I don't know how you would visualize this, but like a mental battle between Bran and the Night King. I don't know how.
The Night King forever ago did turn and see Bran when he was warging in the past. Was it the past that he was looking at?
It was the current moment, but he transferred his consciousness to another point in time.
Yeah.
So he was able to see something that was happening at that moment.
So I'd like to think that the Night King does have, if he can't warg, he has some kind of capability to be aware when it's happening. So if Bran were to just straight go at him like that, I think it wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be so much as it wouldn't be so easy as Bran warging into Hodor to keep him from opening the door.
Right, there's a struggle there because he can resist it. And we talked about this too on our Who's the Night King's Target video, that warging inside of Viserion, warging inside of a white is much easier than warging a living person because there is no resistance, because they're mindless, they're dead. So I think we can assume at this point that the Night King is a warg. He's obviously a greenseer. And the ability to resurrect people from the dead, that might just be super warging. He's just in control of all of them. Because that's what they say, when you kill the White Walker, all those other whites die. Mm-hmm. So they have some sort of mind control over them. But that's the resistance there. It's the Night King. And people have said maybe Bran is going to fight him on this mental plane because Bran always wanted to be a knight when he was growing up. That was his dream, to be knighted, to serve in the King's Guard.
See him just fucking square up with the Night's King.
I've seen a theory that Bran goes back to when the when I guess the Night King was first created.
Yeah.
And then he gets trapped in that body, and then he has to just live through it.
And we've talked about that so many times. It's a theory. I don't think it's going to come true, but I think he's going to go back in time, and this is how you kind of set up the prequel, The Long Night, that he's going to discover some sort of information of how the White Walkers were defeated the first time, because they weren't annihilated. They were defeated. They were pushed back, and now they've returned. So we can all assume he's going back into the past.
It could be something where, like, he's going and the Night King shows up within the past, like some crazy fucking mind trip thing. I always hate, like, time travel and stuff. Like, I never understand it. Like, you don't know where their powers stop, so it's just kind of, what could he do? Could the Night King follow him through and try to stop him from finding the secret? Also, too, I mean, if it's confirmed that the Night King's in the Battle of Winterfell, they said they have a target, right?
Yes.
But I could see maybe something where we talked about, too, where he takes Viserion south and tries to take over King's Landing, rise the Golden Company, and flank them. That's another theory. I don't know if that's going to happen. I tend to believe that they're going to get pushed back either by losing the battle and having to retreat towards King's Landing, or end up winning and then turning their attention towards King's Landing.
Right. Well, you had the theory, too, that maybe the Battle of Winterfell ends with a victory over the Night King. Maybe that's his last episode, and that the true villain of the series has always been Cersei, because she's had the best character development. She's had the strongest arc throughout each season, and she's gone completely mad at this point in Season 8. That would obviously be a twist ending, where you set up this threat, and the threat gets defeated, but at a great cost. The dragons are dead, the White Walkers are gone, Bran's dead, Arya's dead. It just becomes Westeros, a medieval society with no supernatural. All that's gone, and now we have to turn our attention to Cersei, and that's where you can set up Jaime maybe betraying her, maybe Arya killing her. Well, at that point, Arya would be dead, but it would be interesting because people say in the books that the Night King is not going to exist, that for the show they had to put a face on this threat. But in the books, it might be somebody like a Euron Greyjoy who lets the monsters through by blowing the horn of Jormungand. He makes a deal with the White Walkers. It's obviously a huge mistake, and that's how they get through. That would be an interesting idea if the living prevailed in this battle and it was over. Then again, the last 3 episodes after the Battle of Winterfell are all hour and 20 minutes. So what are you doing with that time?
I mean, how would you feel if the Night King was done after the 3rd episode? Because they've been building to this for a really long time. And I think there is a way if the Battle of Winterfell, I was assuming as the 3rd episode in the season, but also like the midway point of the season, they would lose and then they would have to retreat. But if the Night King actually like died and they won, I mean, I think there's a way to do that feels satisfying, I guess, for all these years of buildup. But I can't think of a way for that to happen.
Yeah, it depends, too, on what happens in the first 2 episodes. Because you have 54-minute runtime, you have a 58-minute runtime. Them getting to Winterfell, you don't think it's going to take that long.
I feel like they might, if they're not back in Winterfell in the first episode, they're like nearly there.
Right.
Well,
it's harder to guess those episodes in the battle.
Well, some of the interviews are kind of like I saw, I think it was Sophie Turner saying how she doesn't trust Daenerys and she thinks that she's playing Jon. So I'm sure there'll be like a bit of an internal thing, but I feel like that's not, I guess you need it as far as a way to lead up to the battle, but it's all meaningless in a sense because once the White Walkers show up, then you're going to throw all that away.
It all stops once you see it. It's the same thing that happened in Hardhome with the Thenn. They were on different sides. They were saying, we can't trust the Night's Watch. And then Big Daddy Ice comes, and he's like, you and me now, boy. They were riding out together. So and I also think maybe they learned the lesson from last season, pitting Arya and Sansa against each other.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Yeah, it was not a good move.
Well, that's what they say.
Don't do it with Sansa and Daenerys. At this point, Sansa's got to be smart enough to understand the situation.
I mean, I don't think like any kind of tension between them initially would be bad. I think it would
be expected.
It's expected. It would make sense.
Same with Jon and Daenerys.
It would be disappointing if they dragged that out. Like Sansa was acting out of character because they needed someone to oppose Daenerys. Like I think she would naturally, but I think she would get over it pretty quickly.
I never believed that Sansa and Arya tension last season, so it was just the whole thing. I just felt like, all right, can we just wrap this up already?
It did seem very weird. It was more like the audience didn't know enough about what was happening to understand what they were doing.
It's just poorly written.
Yeah, it was like a withholding from the audience kind of thing that didn't go well.
You stand accused of treason. How do you answer these charges?
Lord Baelish.
Roro.
Especially, I think Sansa's going to end up leading Winterfell. She's going to take over as Warderness of the North or Queen of Winter, like whatever they decide to do with the post wrap up.
Yeah, that's what we mentioned in the Sansa video. That she's going to not rule the North, but she's going to govern the North.
Yeah, whatever society they try to emulate after all this destruction.
Well, I think she's a character that definitely makes it out of the season.
Well, she's that perfect mix, right? Has the honorable of the Starks, right? She's grown up learning from Ned and Kat and all that kind of stuff, and then she also learned from Littlefinger. She knows both sides of the game.
And Cersei.
And Cersei, yeah.
She's almost what Tyrion was to Tywin.
Mm-hmm.
She's just that version of that character with compassion.
She learned from Tyrion, too. She spent some time with him.
She's also just gone through so much, and, like, every character in this show has gone through a whole lot.
But she's gone through the most.
I feel like it would feel really, I guess, good if she ended up in a somewhat happy place when the show ended.
Definitely. She's a character that deserves that happy ending. Well, I guess we'll go to the big guys now, too.
Could there be a happy, like, obviously...
It's not a happy ending.
Bittersweet. It's kind of like...
Well, I think for individual characters, you'll see happy endings, and then for other characters, you're going to see tragic endings.
I mean, yeah, it's like, I'm assuming there's not going to be much left after the Battle of Winterfell, so it's then, if Sansa is the Warden of the North at the end of the series, it's like, how do you rebuild? And then what's going on in King's Landing? Like, now they have to deal with the fallout of
it's a new series right there.
Yeah, the Sansa spinoff. It would literally just be Rome. Just be a show about medieval society. Not Rome, but...
The Westerosi Renaissance.
Right, yeah, exactly. And eventually they discover electricity and the other elements. Going to the big characters, Daenerys, Jon. We've seen Jon participating in the Battle of Winterfell in the trailer. There's a moment where he's running towards somebody, and then it's cut to a shot of them running towards the castle. So it looks like two different shots. It's hard to say what these guys are going to do in the battle, and obviously that's part of why we're watching it, for that element of surprise. Do you think he faces off with the Night King during the Battle of Winterfell? You think they get another one-on-one? Because the actor who plays him, Vladimir Furtick, says that they have a more powerful moment than the one that they shared at Hardhome, where they're staring each other down. So
a J.K. Rowling twist?
Oh, boy.
I mean, do you think the Night King
Jon
leaves the dragon? No. I mean, now that the Night King has the dragon, would he leave the dragon and go into the field and start fighting?
Well, Jon presumably would have control of Rhaegal at this point, and we see him on the field.
You think he gets on Rhaegal?
He has to.
During the battle?
Well, when Daenerys brings them to it.
I kind of want the dragons to be a separate battle. Like, we see an air battle, and then we also see a ground battle.
Well, the idea going around, too, is I saw a fan art. Jon's on Rhaegal. He jumps off of Rhaegal onto Viserion.
I said that.
Oh, but I saw a fan art. What? Can you just let me finish my point?
That's what you stealing my ideas.
I'm not stealing your idea. I'm saying I saw a fan art. I forgot you said it.
All right.
I said that.
Continue.
I saw fan art of an idea that's going around now. I think you mentioned it too, where Jon is on Rhaegal. Aaron, you mentioned it. He's on Rhaegal, he's flying, he jumps off of Rhaegal, and he jumps on Viserion with his Valyrian steel sword, and he kills the Night King. As much as I want to see that happen, I don't think that would happen, but an aerial battle, I think they save Jon for Rhaegal after the Battle of Winterfell, and I think Daenerys is going to be on Drogon. Well, Rhaegal has to fight too, right, if you got him.
But yeah. I think Rhaegal is capable of fighting
he fights on
without
his own,
a writer.
right.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised
if Jon... There's got to be a moment where
he
saves Jon.
Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if Jon is hesitant about riding a dragon, especially with like the combat experience he has and how he feels he might be more useful.
That's that's going to be like...
That's such a Jon Snow thing.
That's a tear moment.
And also, like... I wouldn't put it past him to feel guilty for riding a dragon and like watching his men get slaughtered. Not that he wouldn't be at risk riding a dragon, but it's a very different kind of fight when you're on a dragon.
Yeah, well, I said during Beyond the Wall, I wanted to see him ride Rhaegal then. I wanted an entirely different episode where Jon was like the last man standing and Rhaegal swoops down and picks him up. And that's the first time that he flies him, and then he flies away with Daenerys after Viserion gets pierced up. But yeah, I think if you got Rhaegal, like you said, he knows how to fight on his own. He was fighting in Beyond the Wall. Maybe having somebody on your back to control you helps you not get pieced up like Viserion did.
And think back to that shot on the trailer. Daenerys and Jon are walking towards Drogon and Rhaegal. And then you see the shot when they're flying through like a canyon-type area. I think they might be on them. They might have just edited them out.
Yeah, I think that shot might be... I think that might be after Episode 3. Because I mentioned this too, and we mentioned this in one of the videos, the Night King video, that George said we're going farther north than we've ever been in the Winds of Winter. So you have to assume that they're going back north of the Wall in this season. That just because the Wall came down and the White Walkers came south, there has to be something there, a secret some sort of magic, something that they need to acquire or a deal that they need to make, where they go back to the land of always winter. And that's what some people commented on our video, saying that shot might be them traveling back to the Night King Palace, where he would transform the babies. Because we've only been there once, and there's just got to be something there. There's got to be something, because there's so much time after the Battle of Winterfell. But Jaime, talk a little bit about my favorite character, Jaime.
Do you think he's there at the beginning of the season, like he's already at Winterfell, or he's en route?
I think that might be episode 2. So they get there, Jon, Daenerys get there episode 1, and then Jaime gets his grand introduction back into the North in episode 2. And it looks like there's going to be a bit of animosity between them.
I mean, that's expected.
Yeah. Well, because it goes back to the history of Jaime obviously killing Daenerys' father, and also Cersei going back on her word, and you have the head of her army saying, well, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And who's he there with?
He probably
You think he took the Lannister forces?
Not all of them. He probably assembled his own crew. Maybe Bran.
Bran.
It's just him and Bran.
Yeah. I'm sure he has some.
Should we get Dick on? Oh, wait, no.
Yeah, it's going to be some. Well, Sam and Daenerys, that's going to be a little. You know, he didn't like
I think
Randall.
Sam will be all right, yeah.
But
Dick on
he seemed nice.
I thought they should have just kept Dick on alive, man.
Yeah.
That was unnecessary when I watched that now. Even Randall's like, what are you doing? Giving up a paycheck next season. You could be a breakout star.
Yeah, the Jaime stuff. I hope it's not too, like, I think one of my problems with Beyond the Wall was when all the characters are meeting together and reuniting or meeting for the first time. And you just had, like, kind of awkward, just really nothing dialogue. It's like, oh, you know, I guess you need that because all these characters are meeting, but it's kind of like those conversations could be off screen. They needed something to fill up the time, and it was just very flat. So I think with Jaime, I think we have more invested in the character, and with the other introductions we're going to have, like Daenerys and Jaime, Jon and Jaime meeting again since first episode of season 1, right? When they have that little conversation, and obviously Tyrion and Jaime, where's their relationship? Bran, you know, he did toss him over out of a window.
I'm sure Bran seems like somebody who doesn't hold a grudge.
But you got to have Brienne out there just like, no, listen.
Yeah,
he's
he's
a nice
going
guy.
to do something right.
I mean,
Yeah, obviously, with this time, you talked about those scenes that fell flat and Beyond the Wall. There's a trust to be built here, so there has to be conversations that we see between them to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But you don't want to focus on that too much.
I mean, what I care about most with Jaime, at least, because he is one of my favorite characters in the series, is more his relationship with Cersei. Him leaving her in the first place was a really big deal.
It was a big step for him. He dropped the toxicity out of his life.
The whole prophecy about him maybe being the one to kill her. I don't know if I had any expectations for what he would do at the Battle of Winterfell in the first place. I think we'll see him because with an episode that is majority fighting, they're going to have multiple perspectives with fighting. They have to. I don't want to say I don't care. That's with Jaime, I'm not.
It's Jaime during the Battle of Winterfell. It's going to be cool to see him participate.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're excited about. It's about how does his story end as it pertains to Cersei.
Yeah.
So he's making it out of the Battle of Winterfell.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, the idea that Aaron had too about they're retreating.
Full of ideas.
I don't just steal. Well, the idea that I had, my original idea, is that they're retreating south, and Cersei's just in King's Landing behind the walls, like, I'm not letting you in.
Yeah.
And they make a deal where Jaime goes in as the envoy and says, you know, you need to unlock the gates because we're all about to be obliterated. And she's like, no, I'm not doing it. And he's like, well, then I'm going to kill you. And it's one of those ideas, too, where people talk about it all the time. They talk about it with Jon Snow coming back to life. They talk about it with Endgame, these characters coming back. Just because we know it's going to happen doesn't mean that it won't be satisfying when it does. So we're all pretty much, at this point, I would say it's like 95% that Jaime kills Cersei.
It's a fitting end, too. I talked about it in the Cersei video. But just with Jaime's character, like, people talk about his character arc turn, but Cersei still has a place in him where he's still that same character we hated in season 1. I mean, when he says to Edmure, like, I'll get your newborn baby and catapult it into River Run. It's not something a good guy would say, even though he might be just playing it up the situation, right? Trying to get him to do what he wants. But Jaime still goes to that dark place sometimes. Even though we know him to be a better character than perceived, he still has some of those faults. So finally, all that culminating to him doing something like killing Cersei, if she's still pregnant too. Like, that's still a big thing to say, like, oh, Jaime's killing Cersei. You got to remember, that's his baby, right? even though maybe something happens before then where she has a miscarriage or something happens with the baby, but we don't know that for certain. So that's also a big thing in that whole scenario.
Yeah, it's a double murder.
I'm going to revise my position on Jaime in the Battle of Winterfell. I want him to be so shaken up by what he sees in the Battle of Winterfell, because he hasn't seen any whites yet, right?
You saw one.
Saw the one at the end of season 7.
But that's different than seeing a whole army. I want him to be so shaken up that when he comes back, the perspective he has now compared to what Cersei's doing in King's Landing, I feel like that might be enough to push him. If she's not agreeing and maybe she does something like ridiculous, I could see that being the last straw, and then he kills her because he's like, we need to do this thing and you're not letting us, and it's nothing matters anymore kind of thing.
Well, that's kind of how he was at the end of season 7, and that's kind of how he gets in the books too. And in the books, it's just he's just tired of her shit. Where she's going for the trial of combat, and she writes him a letter and says, "Can you fight for me?" And he's just like, "No." And he crumbles up the letter and throws it away.
It's like in the show, it's like, I don't want to go to River Run and do a siege. In the books, it's like, get me the hell away from it. Yeah,
I'll do 2 sieges. Siege all night. Yeah, it's different in the book. It's different in the show, and I think at this point, it's going to be interesting to see if Cersei still does have that place in his heart, because so much of it was Jaime was suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, and he just enjoyed the praise that she heaped upon him because she obviously wanted to be him. But now she's more powerful than Jaime ever was, so she got what she wanted. That's why I thought at the end of season 7 that she was going to kill him in that moment when the Reigns of Castamere comes on. That scene was beautifully directed because I thought Jaime was done.
I'm the only one you have left. Our children are gone. Our father is gone. It's just me and you now.
There's one more yet to come.
Jaime has said it before. He said it in the books that he came into the world with Cersei. He's going to leave the world with Cersei. That is his love. He's been faithful to her. I love when he brags to Catelyn about how he's only slept with one woman.
I've never been with any woman but Cersei. So in my own way, I have more honor than poor old dead Ned. What was the name of that bastard he fathered?
Brienne?
No, that wasn't it.
Yeah, so it's just going to be cool to see Jaime fighting, though, against the White Walkers. And obviously I have the idea that he might be killing the Night King, sort of a redemption where he's been living his whole life trying to shake off the Kingslayer moniker, but now he is the Kingslayer because he killed the Night King, and he killed the Fire King, the Mad King, and then he kills the Ice King. And it would be poetic for my baby boy.
I had the same sort of theory, right? Kingslayer reliving that moniker, but just Cersei.
Cersei.
But this time it's a heroic, and it'll be looked upon with more
admiration.
Yeah.
Or understanding, at least. Because people just didn't understand the Arya situation.
That's Stark. Jumping to conclusions.
Yeah. What?
It's like, you stabbed the back of your king that you swear to protect. Yeah, you revolted against him, Ned.
Ned.
It's different.
When I watched the Mad King die, I remembered him laughing as your father burned. It felt like justice.
Is that what you tell yourself at night? You're a servant of justice.
I guess everyone's, well, not our favorite Lannister. Most people's favorite, I think.
He's like the casual fan's favorite character.
Yeah.
He's the most recognizable character in the show.
And it's interesting, too.
Tyrion Lannister.
He was talking about how, that look he gave when Jon and Daenerys were sleeping together. And he was talking about, I think, Peter Dinklage, about how he's worried about if that relationship goes south, the effects it will have on the impending battle. So it's interesting to see what he's going to be doing leading up to the Battle of Winterfell and during the Battle of Winterfell. You got to forget, this man did plan the defense of King's Landing in Blackwater. He's no slouch when it comes to that. He had a couple of missteps in Marine, but I think he's back for some redemption.
And in Westeros, his second time around.
Yeah. So you think he'll have like a hand in the strategy going into that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's what kind of sucked about Tyrion in Season 7 is that they just gave him these ideas that the showrunners wanted to use, and they just placed them on Tyrion where you don't expect that from Tyrion Lannister or George R.R. Martin's writing. The idea to get a white from beyond the wall, it's not something that we liked, but I guess that's what he has to do in Season 7, kind of plan the defense of Winterfell. And obviously we made the video, will he betray Daenerys in Season 8 because of the rift between them, where she just had this declaration of wanting to break the wheel, but now every time that he brings it up, she doesn't want to hear about it, because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually do it. So do you think there could be a betrayal there where Tyrion says, this woman no longer has this idea of remaking the world. I have to take this into my own hands.
It would have to be after the White Walkers are gone.
Right.
He can't.
Well, that kind of goes into your idea. If the ending is the Night King dies episode 4 or 5, then it becomes back to the politics again of making this world, making a new world. I could see it more in the books because he's a different character in the books. He's a madman. He's not a madman, but he's starting to go a little crazy.
He has some dark thoughts.
Right, but Daenerys, I said it in the video too, she changed him from a realist to an idealist. There's an idea now that they're trying to bring to life, and we know how idealism can turn people, gives them tunnel vision, where they're only focused on one thing. So I wouldn't hate a betrayal. I don't think it's going to be too where it ends with like him shooting her on the toilet, you know. It's something more subtle, something that maybe he doesn't even think he doesn't think of it as a betrayal. He thinks he's doing the right thing. It's like a
I was
Fredo.
gonna say, as someone who hasn't read the books and has only seen the show,
how dare you?
I could see Tyrion doing something that he thinks is overall good for Westeros, for the kingdom, anything, and that Daenerys will see as a betrayal, and that will be, I guess, maybe a finishing blow between them. I don't know if he will go into it purposely thinking like, I'm gonna pull one over on her.
Right.
That'd be cool. I don't know if it's cool, but it would be interesting too if she senses something happening and like Tyrion just can't stand by her anymore and is just totally disgusted with the way she wants to go forward in her reign, and he goes back to King's Landing. It's like, hey, Cersei.
Hey, what's up, sis? You need help running the kingdoms?
Let's fucking do this. Let's team up.
You know what? It's the handshake meme. Tyrion and Cersei working side by side. No, that would be terrible. He's going to be strategizing for the defenses, doing things like that.
Because it's like, how do you strategize against that? Because they're out in the field, and the show has done that like so many times, and they've tried to justify it, like not doing a siege or staying in the walls of Winterfell. Oh, Ramsay needs to make a statement. So they kind of got around that for a more exciting clash, because no one wants to see a siege. Those things are boring. Look at River Run. It's just interesting how they decide to strategize and defend against this.
I love that line
threat.
too at River Run, where Blackfish is like, we've got enough rations to survive for 4 years. It's like, oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Extend the show another 5 seasons. I think maybe because they have the dragon, where Jon's saying we can't stay in the castle, because if we stay in the castle, first of all, they'll climb the walls.
Yeah.
These whites, they're fucking crazy. And they'll just get us from the top, and at that point, we're toast.
But also, aren't sieges generally like hoping you'll outlast the other army?
Yeah.
I mean, they're already
Night
dead.
King, yeah, right. They
That'd
don't
be
need
funny
to
if
do
they're
that.
digging trenches.
That would just be right. That would just be a permanent fucking siege.
It's not like the Night King needs to worry about feeding his army or anything. Like,
no, that man's living his best life, son.
Is he?
Well, he's having a good time. That's the thing, too. I'm rooting for him in this episode, and I'm rooting for him throughout the season.
I kind of just want to see him do some stuff.
What if, let me propose this idea to you. What if he does win? Is that a bad ending for the show? Where it just ends where everybody dies, and he's on the Iron Throne. And it's like...
What does he do?
He lives.
Doing what?
I feel like if he
just
wins...
sitting there?
He just sits there permanently.
I mean,
That's what he seems to do, right? Just sits and stares.
Isn't there... I might be totally confusing this with something else. Isn't there some theory that the reason they're coming south in the first place is because of some other reason that the show hasn't really gotten into yet?
Yeah, it's more of, it goes back into the history of, there's so much lore, and we've covered it too, about, it's going to be more about bridging a peace between these two people.
Yeah, so I think if he wins, it's going to be something about that.
Well, I think if he wins in that sense, it's where both sides win. Both sides win and lose. Where obviously they take their losses throughout the fighting, and then they come to a compromise. You know, a good compromise is where both sides are disappointed, right? Isn't that what Henry Clay says?
I don't know.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't think... Also, I don't know if I'd like to see an ending where he just does win and everybody dies. But the prophecy says Azor Ahai that if Azor Ahai falls, then the world will fall with him. So usually prophecies say Azor Ahai will come and save the day, but in this prophecy it very specifically says that he might fail.
Do you think they'll stick to Jon having to make a sacrifice?
Sacrificing Daenerys, right?
Daenerys, Ghost,
Somebody.
Ned. Ned's dead. I don't know why I said
Little Ned.
Ned. I meant to say Bran. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, that kind of plays into Craster's sacrifices. Sam, yeah. Well, I think it has to be Jon and Daenerys. There's something that's going to happen where we've obviously theorized about it. Between the Night King, between Jon, between Daenerys, and between Bran, there's something that, like you said, that the show hasn't revealed to us yet, and the books haven't revealed to us yet. But the books have more hinted to it.
I don't think we've talked to Melisandre. What's her deal?
No, we didn't talk Melisandre.
I forgot about her.
What is she doing?
She went to Volantis, and we talked about maybe she's trying to convince the Golden Company. She's trying to sway them to fight on Daenerys'
For who?
side.
Oh, for Daenerys?
Yeah, the Fiery Hand, which is basically the army of R'hllor, trying to bring them over to fight on the side of the living. And in the books, it looks like the Long Night happened, the first Long Night happened in Westeros and Essos. It doesn't look like we're going to see the Long Night in Essos in the show. We probably won't see Essos again. I think when Melisandre comes back, she's going to be in Westeros. I don't know. Do you guys have any ideas of what she's doing? Because would she go to visit family?
Davos was pretty upset with her, so.
She did burn
Well,
a
she went
child.
south and then told Varys that me and you have to die in this strange country.
It's not like the last we see of her, I guarantee. She'll probably do something.
She'll be in season 8.
This is like her war that she's been trying to prepare for.
She hasn't been in any of the photos.
No.
No Bronn.
Maybe they just got together. They linked up and
Her and Bronn, they
they're
got
in
a castle.
Harrenhal.
We also have minor characters who are going to be participating in this battle. Obviously, we have the Unsullied, and it looks like they're fighting with dragonglass armor and spears and shields. And we have Jorah Mormont wielding Heartsbane, the Valyrian steel sword of House Tarly. And Gendry, forgot about Gendry, looking like a snack in that moment in the trailer. And obviously, they brought him back so that he can make weapons, and presumably with the dragonglass. So we talked about this too on another video. I think it was on a podcast, and I mentioned this on the Night King video, that they're probably going to make dragonglass spears and use that ballista. So that's a way that they can take out Viserion.
He might not necessarily need dragonglass to kill him. I would assume he's similar to the Whites in the fact that it's just fire, maybe. Then that might be too easy, because Drogon will just fucking roast them real quick.
Well, the science too is that fire can't hurt a dragon.
Okay.
So you would think maybe that applies to an undead dragon as well. Maybe that kind of carries over. It gets grandfathered in with the resurrection.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to kill the Whites is fire, but maybe with the dragon, so he might just be invincible. He might just need to fucking...
Yeah, or a giant fucking dragonglass spear through his throat.
Yeah.
One idea that I like, too, is that Bran takes control of the dragon and just flies him right in front of one of the ballistas and says, shoot me, and he sacrifices himself like that. It's almost like a kamikaze mission, and then Bran's body also gets killed in the act, and that's his main sacrifice. That's how his story ends.
I mean, you can return to your body even after the dragon dies.
Well, I'm saying his consciousness gets transferred to the dragon in a moment of desperation where he's being attacked by Whites. That's the last thing that he does. His body gets destroyed, but his consciousness goes to the dragon.
Yeah,
and then it dies inside of the dragon.
Like the prologue
right.
of Feast, right?
With Varamir Sixskins.
He got no love.
Shout out to Varamir. That would have been a cool
opening. What do you think? They're just going to ship over from Dragonstone all the dragonglass?
Well, they already did, right? Yeah, when they left from Eastwatch. Remember, they had all those boats. So they had all the chests, and Jon said, this is all we'll ever need. And I'm sure Gendry will participate in the battle, but his main job is going to be creating spears, swords, daggers, arrows. So they're just going to be loaded up with dragonglass.
Maybe he found a way to... I heard someone say, maybe Sam found a secret for Valyrian, or Bran could find a secret on how to make Valyrian steel, and Gendry could, him being probably one of the best smiths of all time, I assume.
Top 3.
Yeah. That
shot of Drogon breathing the fire.
Yeah.
That's what they say that moment is him
making Valyrian steel. So that'd be crazy. I was rewatching the season 7 premiere when they're all walking. So we only get to see usually 4 or something White Walkers, but there's a lot more. When you see the big dragon the big giant Whites, you could see a few more White Walkers there. So there's gonna have to be a ton of them, because if everyone
might need to use those ballistas for the giants too.
Yeah, if everyone has a dragon, either a dragon glass or Valyrian steel weapon, and there's only 4 or 5 of them, like we've seen, then it's not gonna be that hard of a battle. So I'm expecting there to be fucking tons of White Walkers.
We have Bran, we have Brienne, the Hound, the remaining Brotherhood without banners, Beric Dondarrion. I think that's the interesting one too, because there's that shot of Beric, Tormund, and Ed, and I had speculated that they might be visiting the Night Fort, trying to unlock some of the secrets of Westerosi lore. Do you think Beric does a little kiss of death, kiss of life in season 8? Bring somebody back?
That's possible. Depends who. If they want to riff off of, I guess, Lady Stoneheart and make it Sansa or Arya or something like that. Jon would be a little too, all right, we got it once, we don't really need it again. So it depends. And also Theon. What's Theon up to?
He's got to be with Daenerys, right?
Yeah, but like he wasn't in anything, right? I didn't see him in the trailer.
No.
Photos.
He was on the Iron Throne.
Okay.
But he wasn't in that group shot that they did in King's Landing. That's where it looked like they were in Spain.
Euron too. There's so many different. When you get down to like the little, it's easier to think of the bigger characters and their plans are, but there's so many different characters and loose ends they have to wrap up. So you can use that for the first 2 episodes, kind of get that train rolling, and then lead into the big battle.
Well, do you think the Golden Company, I guess we'll end it with this, does the Golden Company fight for Jon and Daenerys during the Battle of Winterfell or for them at any point in Season 8?
I think maybe at some point in Season 8, I don't know if they make it to Winterfell for that battle.
It's too quick of a turnaround, right?
Yeah, even though, I mean, lately they've been a fan of the quick. People are just here now, but who knows? Maybe in the downtime between the seasons, the Golden Company made it there or halfway there, or we get an update on them.
The show really never established their connection to Blackfyre, Targaryen, stuff like that. I don't know if you just bring it up out of nowhere. It's like, oh, by the way, this massive army Cersei got used to be Blackfyre, started by a Blackfyre who, and get into the history of Blackfyre Targaryens, and there's no...
Get Samuel L. Jackson to narrate it.
Yeah, there's no Aegon, so I guess that goes to Jon. Well, Jon is Aegon now, I guess.
Yeah, Aegon Targaryen.
Yeah. So I don't know how they'll make that connection if they just put it out there. It's like, oh, okay, this is how it is.
Yeah, an interesting fact about the Golden Company, too, is the elephants that they have. And I'm sure they might have other forms of weaponry that will be new to the world of Westeros and that we haven't seen yet. But I think it would be a cool idea if the elephants fell and then were resurrected by the Night King. Giants riding mammoths out there.
Well, that would have to be if the Night King succeeds at Winterfell and then they turn their attention to King's Landing. Unless Cersei changed her mind. It's like, hey, let's go help those guys up there.
Well, it seems like something like you have all these tools, D&D. You have the elephants, you have the ice spiders as big as hounds, you have the white giants, you have the undead dragon, you have the real dragons. You gotta bring these dudes all to the table at the same time. Just let them have it out.
So I saw someone on Twitter.
For one Tolkien-esque epic battle.
Someone on Twitter was upset that they used the polar bear instead of ice spider big as hounds.
I like the polar bear. I'm a defender of the polar bear.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see them in Season 8, the ice spiders, as big as hounds. But we'll see.
I mean, I think the first 2 episodes are very much just going to be we'll see other characters who aren't involved in the Battle of Winterfell, but it's mostly just going to be the build up to the Battle of Winterfell. And then we'll get more, obviously, afterwards, whatever the outcome of that is.
Yeah, as much as I'm looking forward to this battle, I'm more interested to see what's going to happen after it. Because that's the mystery here.
I mean, also, most Game of Thrones seasons, I would say the climax generally happens. Like the 9th episode of the typical 10-episode season is usually the best one. It's like where everything is kind of just like left on the table, and then the 10th episode is cleanup. But if we're assuming that the Battle of Winterfell is going to be like the big episode of the season, then that leaves a lot more time to tie up loose ends, which with a series finale you would hope for. But I also wonder how that's going to change, like, I guess, the dynamic of the season.
Yeah, so Game of Thrones Season 8 coming on this Sunday, and we're all ready. And we're going to have our episode reviews, we're going to have our spoiler discussions, and we're going to have our previews for every episode. So looking forward to this episode in particular, but just the whole season. So I'm looking forward to having you guys back here every week, and I hope you guys will return and listen to us and enjoy the season. Aaron, where can the kids find you on the old social medias?
At NerdSoupMonkey on Twitter and Instagram, and give me a follow there. We'll definitely have some takes on Twitter and Instagram. So.
And Marissa, you're on MySpace, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Someone asked me if she had a Twitter. I'm like, I don't know.
We don't know.
Not a Nerd Soup Twitter.
No.
We are work friends with Marissa. That's official. Yeah, and you can follow us at the Nerd Soup account, Nerd Soup for you, on Twitter and Instagram. That's where we mostly operate, and Facebook. And nice water on your shirt there.
I missed my mouth.
Yeah, you stupid monkey. Hey guys, thank you for watching this video, and before we go, I want to quickly thank our Patreon supporters. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to grow and evolve as a channel, so thank you for your generous pledges. If you are interested in supporting our channel through Patreon, visit www.patreon.com/nerdsoup, and you can see the different rewards we offer to our Patreon supporters. T-shirts, mugs, stickers, access to our behind-the-scenes video, and more. Thanks again for watching this video, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Or dislike, don't share, and unsubscribe. It's a binary world, folks.